All right. Well, we are not off to a great start here as the audio portion did not function. That's mostly because of a dead battery that apparently things weren't charging. Not great start to episode 421 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff show. I'm here by myself this evening. Justin is not here, unfortunately. He is on vacation. And as we have mentioned over the last few months leading up to this time of year, things were going to be sparse around here. About a month ago, Justin and I started our 2025 NFL preview with part one, and we did 16 teams. We did 4 divisions. We did both West divisions, both South divisions. So tonight, by myself, I'll be doing the 2 North divisions and the 2 East divisions. Now, I do have some input from others, including Justin. I have his picks for those 4 divisions, the final 16 teams in our 2025 NFL preview. And it's probably for the best that not only is he not able to join me, but that anyone was able to fill in and hang out with me here to talk about the NFL rapidly approaching season. We're about 2.5 months away from kickoff in early September, and very much looking forward to it. The reason that it's probably good no one's here with me is because, well, my air conditioning has stopped working at only the worst possible time of not just this year, but over the last few years as the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast is entering a very hot spell that's supposed to last through this entire next week. Peak somewhere around Tuesday. Heat index up into the mid to high 100s, 107, 109 I saw. Not great, but we've been making the best of it, and shout out and thanks to our family and friends who have offered to take us in, provide some cooled necessities, and to my parents and my sister-in-law for having the girls stay with them and avoid the heated house as it is. Kelly and I stayed here last night. We're staying here tonight, but we'll see how it goes the next few days as the heat really starts to unload on us here in Pennsylvania. But before we get to the NFL preview, we are going to start with the trivia. We did a trivia question last month on episode 420, sent in by Justin's dad, Jeff Raffoff, and he actually came back with another one. Now, I don't know if anyone out there listening is going to take a chance at guessing this. If you are, leave it in the comments on the live video. And I started this episode earlier than normal because there seemed to be no real reason to wait. It's time to get this show on the road. Why wait till 6:30 when it was just going to be me? And this will give me ample opportunity to hang out with the family this evening and cap despite the non-working AC, a pretty fun weekend. Yesterday, got to take the girls to Nova Adventure Park. Got to watch them jump around and have a great time. Had a great time at Haley's gymnastics show today. That was awesome. I posted some photos and pictures from that. And we're going to cap things here with the podcast. But we're starting with the trivia question sent in by Jeff. I won't try to guess because I know the answers because I had to transcribe them onto the image you're seeing here. But if anyone would like to take a guess, leave it in the comments. I'll wait till the very end to put up the answers. But our weekly trivia question this week, if you're listening in the future on the podcast, the audio only feed, the trivia question sent in by Jeff this time is, there are only 5 Major League Baseball players to hit 100 or more home runs for 3 different teams. Who are they? So these individuals hit 100 home runs or more across 3 different teams. So they have at least 300 career home runs. Obviously, if you're hitting that many home runs with different teams, you probably have many more than that. But who are the biggest home run hitters that did so for 3 different teams? Now, I tried to take a guess at this before seeing the answers, and I think I got 2 or 3 of the 5. So I was not perfect on this. And like I said, leave it in the chat if you are listening or watching us live. If you have any guesses, we're looking for 5 players here. You don't have to give me the teams, just the name of the player. I'll go over the teams. I actually have a breakdown of how many they hit with each team. I think 2 or 3 should be pretty easy. 4 of them I knew very well known players, and I should have gotten probably 1 or 2 that I didn't. There's one on here though that I was not very familiar with, so I always like that. I always love to learn more about sports history, and this question provided that. So thanks again to Justin's dad, Jeff, for sending in this second trivia question. There are only 5 MLB players to hit 100 plus home runs for 3 different teams. Who are they? So let us know, and we'll give you a shout out on the air. We'll go over some of the guesses, and then I will give the actual answers at the end of this program. Well, we're not going to delay things any longer than that. We're going to dive right into previewing the final 4 NFL divisions on our 2025 preview. We're going to start in the NFC North. So this is always an interesting division just because of the long-standing rivalries, the history for the NFL, these franchises here. A lot of history, a lot of tradition. And obviously we're talking about the Chicago Bears, the Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers, and the Minnesota Vikings. The Lions have been the one that has burst on the scene over the last few years, getting better each season. They won the division last year, looked really strong going into the playoffs, and then faded against the Commanders and rookie Jaden Daniels. Fantastic season from the Commanders, and we'll get to them in a little bit. But talking about the NFC North, Bears, Lions, Packers, Vikings, where are we going to go? So I do have Justin's picks. I didn't do them by team. I did them by division. Why don't we, I'm just going to put his picks up on the screen and to discuss them team by team and let everyone know if I agree with them. I also do have picks from my dad, so we can see how he matches up with our predictions and expectations. And we will go from there. So, all right. So these are Justin's picks for the NFC North in 2025. He is going to go 1 to 4, Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears, which similar to last year, but his win totals are definitely different, especially for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, last year, the Detroit Lions were 15-2. Absolutely ridiculous season from them, and just came up short in the postseason, as we mentioned, and losing in the divisional round, their first postseason game, 45-31 at home to the 6-seeded Commanders. Tough loss for them, but absolutely insane showing during the regular season. 15-2, just remarkable. The number 1 seed in the NFC. Elsewhere for them, the Minnesota Vikings were right behind them at 14-3 last year. Green Bay Packers a few steps below them, 3rd place in the division at 11-6, and the final NFC playoff team, that 7 seed wild card, Packers were 11-6, and then Chicago Bears with then rookie quarterback Caleb Williams finished towards the end of the NFC at 5-12. So last year it was Lions, Vikings, Packers, Bears. Justin this year has it going Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears. And a lot of changes for the Minnesota Vikings. And anytime you have a quarterback change, you know that things are there's a lot of unknowns. It was a bit of a surprise last year with how well Sam Darnold played. A great season, except kind of faltered at the end. And because of those issues and him being only on a 1-year contract, they did not bring him back. They said goodbye to Sam Darnold, who moved on to the Seattle Seahawks, who we discussed a month ago when we started our NFL preview. So the Minnesota Vikings are likely rolling with J.J. McCarthy, who they took in the first round in the 2024 draft. He missed all of last year with the knee injury. So what do we expect from the Vikings this year if it is going to be McCarthy? They have mostly an entirely new quarterback room, at least active-wise. It's McCarthy coming off of IR, backed up most likely by Sam Howell, who they acquired in a trade. And Darnold's gone, and so is Daniel Jones, who was brought in after the Giants let him go during the season last year. He was the backup with the Vikings. possibility that he was going to take over the role for the Vikings, but he instead chose possibly a better opportunity with the Indianapolis Colts. We talked a bit about the Colts on the show a month ago when we did the AFC and NFC, the AFC South division with the Indianapolis Colts. Not sure what's going on with him and Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. I think a lot of people believe that Daniel Jones could at some point this year start for the Indianapolis Colts, and that may not necessarily mean that there was an injury to Anthony Richardson. A lot of issues going on with the Colts' young quarterback. Hasn't been able to stay healthy, hasn't always looked good when he's in there. But Daniel Jones moves on from the Vikings just like Sam Darnold does, and the Vikings are stuck with J.J. McCarthy. He's a very polarizing young quarterback. Hasn't shown anything yet in the NFL, at least in the regular season. He had a good start or two in the preseason, and then the injury surfaced and he missed all of last year. So that's, I think, a lot of where Justin's trepidation with the Vikings come from, dropping them from 14 wins to about 8 wins. That's a huge drop off, but I don't know that I don't know that I can disagree. I don't think the Vikings roster is as talented as the Lions or Packers. I also think the Bears have gotten a little bit better as well. Yeah, 8 wins. That's a big drop. That's a 6-win reduction for the Vikings. Now, they did bring back Aaron Jones. They re-signed him to an extension. And he was a very strong running back for them coming over from Green Bay last year. So we'll see how things stack up. They did redo their offensive line. They brought in Ryan Kelly and Will Fries from the Colts to try to upgrade the offensive line. They moved on from Garrett Bradbury, brought in Ryan Kelly, and drafted Donovan Jackson, the offensive lineman from Ohio State, in the first round. I think anytime you have Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the NFL, things are going to probably go okay. But I talked about J.J. McCarthy being polarizing to a lot of people. There are some people that think he was worthy of a top 5, top 10 pick in 2024. There's others that wouldn't have taken him in the first round. That's both, actual experts, analysts, scouts, and then people like Justin and me. Justin and me, I know, fall on the other side of things. We didn't think J.J. McCarthy was worthy of not only a first-round pick, but a top 10 pick, but a first-round pick at all. I just don't think he did enough at Michigan to warrant that high of a selection. I'm not a huge fan of his play, and he's got a lot to show. He's got to step up and show a lot, and he's got a talented roster around him. We already mentioned everyone knows Justin Jefferson, but Jordan Addison's one of the better number 2 receivers in the NFL. They traded for Rondale Moore as a number 3. We talked about the offensive line changes. They brought in some new defensive players, including Jonathan Allen from the Commanders, and their defense is pretty good. I think that's one of the saving graces there, that maybe we wouldn't see a reduction in 6 wins from 14 to 8 like Justin has here. But Brian Flores, despite his issues as head coach down in Miami, he is a proven defensive coordinator. He has made that defense operate very well in Minnesota now. And I don't know that I would expect much left, but I do think the Lions and Packers are better than the Vikings. I think the Vikings last year was a bit of an aberration. I don't think I can say double-digit wins for them. So we're close to what Justin said anyways, 8 wins. I probably would peg them at about 9. I think a 9-8 season from the Vikings is very possible. I think J.J. McCarthy has talent. I just don't know that he's going to be able to replicate even the Renaissance season from Sam Darnold last year. So I would have the Vikings also in 3rd place in that division, probably about 9 wins myself. Let's move on to the Bears now and discuss what's going to happen with the Bears in our eyes this coming season. So last year didn't go great for the Bears. 5-12. They fired their coach around Thanksgiving. They went 1-4 the rest of the way. Didn't get too much. Didn't look great on offense at times. It came out this offseason that Caleb Williams maybe didn't want to go to Chicago. I don't know how much of that will linger. Excuse me, in the locker room or with the fan base, but the new head coach is Ben Johnson, and he was probably the number one assistant coach out there to be hired as a first-time head coach. Everyone has been very interested for a few years. The Bears end up going to get him. He is an offensive savant. That's the way he's looked, at least resurrecting Jared Goff's career in Detroit. He's done very well in the few years and become a household name, and now is the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And he gets Caleb Williams still young in year 2. Obviously, he has to now put in another offensive system. I don't know that any of their offseason adjustments or offseason signings really stand out all that much, except for the trades. They also were trying to upgrade their offensive line, which outside of maybe a great tight end is probably your rookie's best friend, or a young quarterback's best friend is a great offensive line. And they traded for Jonah Jackson from the Rams and Joe Thuney from the Chiefs, both on March 12th, and brought those guys in the interior offensive line to hopefully give Caleb Williams more time. They drafted Colson Loveland, the Michigan tight end. Like I said, young quarterback's best friend, a great tight end. Now they still have Cole Kmet. And they also drafted Luther Burden. They probably are losing Keenan Allen. They haven't really made any adjustments to bring him back, but they still have DJ Moore and Roma Dunze, the rookie from last year. So there's talent there. Case Keenum's the new backup quarterback behind Caleb Williams. DeAndre Swift, the running back with Roschon Johnson. It comes down to Caleb Williams. It's a quarterback's league. It's a make or break season. They could get a nice bump from the addition of Ben Johnson at head coach, and calling the plays or having a large handle in the plays. I haven't heard, actually, I don't recall if him or Declan Doyle, the offensive coordinator, are calling the plays. But Ben Johnson made a name for himself doing so I wouldn't be surprised if he has a direct link to Caleb Williams and calling the plays. Are they better than 5 wins last year? Have they made upgrades? People think they made upgrades at head coach. Caleb Williams going into year 2. Not many other changes across the board, at least significant ones. There's a few players here and there that have been added, but I don't know that it was enough. Is Ben Johnson enough? Is a new offensive system a huge improvement to best 5 wins? Like Justin, he had 6 wins for the Bears, 4th place, 6 wins. I could see that happening. Could they sneak out a 7th win? I think so. I think I'm in agreement with Justin, just like I was with the Vikings. He said 8 wins. I'll go 9 wins. I'll stick with 6 wins for the Bears for him. I do think they're a last place team at the moment, and that all hinges on Caleb Williams. So we'll see what he's able to do. Just like Justin and I were not high on Trevor Lawrence as this generational quarterback coming out of Clemson and going to the Jaguars, Justin and I didn't like Caleb Williams coming out of USC and being the slam dunk number 1 overall pick going to the Chicago Bears last year. Maybe things will change this year, but I don't necessarily see it. So I also have the Bears in last place at 6 wins. And spoiler, I'm in agreement with Justin here as well. I have the Packers in 2nd and the Lions in 1st. Just in agreement with Justin has here. I don't think the Lions are going to win 15 games this year like they did last year. I think 11 is a possibility. Now they've gone through another season of improvement. They have a first place schedule coming up this season again, and things are just going to get tougher every single year for the Lions as other people are now gunning for them. They used to be the one making waves and moving up and ending seasons like they did a few years ago against the Green Bay Packers, but now they're the ones being hunted, and we'll have to see how they react to that. Losing Ben Johnson is a big blow to the offensive staff there, but Dan Campbell has made a name for himself as a fantastic coach. John Morton is their new offensive coordinator, and David Shaw, the passing game coordinator. We'll see what happens with the offense now. Does Jared Goff start to show a regression to the mean, or to go back where he was for much of his Rams tenure? Or can he continue to play at an elite level like he has the last 2 seasons? They certainly have plenty of offensive firepower with Gibbs and Montgomery in the backfield. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown's a great number 1, and the emergence of Jamison Williams last year is a speedy number 2. Sam Laporta, one of the best tight ends in the league, and their offensive line, even with the loss of their center to retirement, and now I'm completely blanking on his name, but Frank Ragnow. Frank Ragnow retired on June 2nd. So that's a big loss. The Lions have one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in the NFL, at least last year. It'll be interesting to see who slides in there, if it's going to be Cologne or Nice, who's going to lead the way. But we know their tackles, Decker and Sewell, are 2 of the best in the game. I still expect them to be very strong, but they do have to replace their center and their offensive play caller. And Jared Goff, despite the way he's played the last few years, I think there's still plenty of people that think that he could become, a middle of the pack average quarterback instead of being like a fringe top 10, maybe even top 7 or 8 guy in the NFL as he's played the last few years. Defensively, very up and down last year for the Lions, which is one of the reasons I don't think they're going to get to 15 wins again. It's just hard to constantly win shootouts. They need the defense to step up at times. I know they're probably middle of the pack in a lot of the rankings, but the defense wasn't able to stop Daniels and the Commanders in the playoffs. They had a lot of issues on that side of the ball at parts of the season last year. They gave up, 40-some points to the Commanders. They gave up 34 points to the 49ers, gave up 48 points to the Bills, 31 points to the Packers. There were some games that the defense just couldn't help them, and they need improvement on that side of the ball and continuation of what they're able to do on offense to win this division again. I do think they'll get there, and like Justin, I would probably peg them at about 11 wins, but they're gonna have a tough schedule, especially the way they close things out. From Thanksgiving on, they have Packers, Cowboys, at Rams, Steelers, at Vikings, at Bears. Now, they luck out maybe with Vikings, Bears, but they're on the road. But Vikings and Bears, I think they're better than. Those should be 2 of the easier games on that schedule. We haven't gotten to the Steelers yet, but you never know what to expect out of Pittsburgh, and I'm still not sure what to expect from the Steelers. But Packers, Cowboys, Rams all on the road. I know Cowboys may be the worst of that bunch on paper, but I don't think they're going to be a terrible team. Packers, Cowboys, Rams is a tough go from November 27th on. And leading up to that, they have the Giants on November 23rd, but after their bye in Week 8, they go Vikings, Commanders, Eagles. And the Commanders and Eagles games are on the road. So very tough schedule for the Detroit Lions. They're going to have to get off to a fast start and see where things go. But I have them finishing first in the North with Justin at 11 wins. And all that leaves left is the Green Bay Packers. And Justin has them in second, about 10 wins. I agree. I think that's where they're going to finish up in 2025, is right behind the Detroit Lions and a fringe wildcard playoff team, just like last year. I don't know. I mean, maybe Reclamation Project and Isaiah Simmons will stand out, like Xavier McKinney last year for them was a great addition. Maybe Isaiah Simmons will be that this year. Mecole Hardman comes over from the Kansas City Chiefs. Their biggest addition probably was in the draft in the speedy wide receiver from Texas, Matthew Golden, first round, 23rd overall. They'll expect big things from him. They have an interesting collection now in their wide receiver room with Romeo Doubs, Mecole Hardman, Bo Melton, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks. I don't think all of them are going to make it out of camp. That's a lot of an interesting group of players. You generally are going to have 5 or 6 make the roster, so maybe they all will make it, but that's an interesting group of, it feels like a collection of high-end or high-ceiling 2s, but a lot of 3s. Will anyone stand up and grab the number one spot, or will be a constant cycle? Because we saw in years past, especially last year, Dubs, Reed, Watson have all three kind of rotated through of who's Jordan Love's number one target. So that's something to keep an eye on, especially from a fantasy perspective. Tight ends Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave are a great 1-2 there for them. Solid offensive line for Green Bay, and sort of like Detroit, an inconsistent defense for the Packers. And they start facing off with the defending NFC number one seed and division champion Detroit Lions on September 7th. And the Packers finish at US Bank Stadium against the Vikings in early January. So I think more of the same from the Packers. I think they're above average team. They're, a 10, maybe 11 win team if things go their way. I think Jordan Love is a good quarterback. I don't know that I'd have him in the top 10, but I think he's right there. I think he has shown improvement each year, and he's got to do that again in 2025. So as a quick recap, Justin and me are in complete agreement in the NFC North. Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears. All right, moving on to the AFC North now, and this is where Justin has the AFC North finishing out. He is going to go 1-4. Baltimore, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. Again, I'll just jump right in and say I agree with him. I am completely in alignment with what he is saying. I think that is the order that it's going to be. We could nitpick the wins for sure, but I think, honestly, Baltimore is stacked. Playoff underachievement aside, I think the Ravens have the inside track probably to the number one seed in the AFC, at least to me. I know Justin has them near to that, but not quite the number one team. But, we talked about the Chiefs a month ago. They're obviously still going to be in contention there for the number one seed, and we'll get to a team here in the future. We'll end with them that will have a say in the number one seed in the AFC. But Ravens, he has at 12 wins. Bengals about 10 wins. Steelers around 9 wins as usual. And the Browns down at 5 wins. So let's just start with the Baltimore Ravens. So 2025 is their 30th season in the NFL. And not a ton has changed for them, at least not a lot that stands out in terms of big changes coming for them, at least in departures. A few here, there's always going to be some churn. But they did bring in DeAndre Hopkins from the Chiefs as kind of a seasoned veteran wide receiver for help there. They brought in the Cowboys' backup quarterback Cooper Rush in case of a Lamar Jackson extended miss for injury or whatever. Awuzie from the Titans and recently Jair Alexander, both cornerbacks, added as additions to the Ravens' defense. Maybe the biggest thing of note is that they released Justin Tucker, and of course that is related to off the field issues. He had his worst season of his career last year, but then the off the field issues came to light, and you can kind of be like, well, those might be linked. So they did say goodbye to Justin Tucker. In the draft, they brought in Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia, in the first round. Probably the most notable addition for the Ravens, but still led by Coach John Harbaugh and led by Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. They re-signed or extended Rashad Bateman. They brought in, DeAndre Hopkins, and they still have Zay Flowers out there at receiver. And then a multi-faceted tight end group led by Mark Andrews, who started a little slow last year, but came on towards the end despite the issue in the playoff game. Isaiah Likely is a great number 2 or maybe even a 1B, and then Charlie Kolar as well. Fantastic tight end group with the Ravens, and they've always been known for their offensive linemen, and they've got another fantastic group this year as well. Linderbaum, the center, is one of my favorites. Ronnie Stanley's been there for about a decade now, a tackle. And their defense is always strong, and we just mentioned they drafted another safety after getting Kyle Hamilton a few years ago. Now they draft Malachi Starks. They got Nate Wiggins at DB last year. Marlon Humphrey's still there, and they brought in Alexander Nwuzie in that secondary too. So they are stacked at all phases. So last year, they won the division and were 12-5, beat the Steelers any two ways about it. I think the Ravens are better. They were 12-5 last year, going through that stretch of a schedule and always have these big time games in their own division, and they prove that they're one of the best, and they get to show that right away at the beginning of the season. And they travel back to Buffalo on September 7th for the Sunday night game against the Bills. They also get to play the Lions, the Chiefs, my Miami Dolphins, who they seem to always beat. And then they have a bunch of their division games from November 16th onward. They play Cleveland Browns in week 2, but then their final 5 AFC North games are from week 11 through week 18. And the Steelers games are not played until week 14 and week 18. So they don't get to play the Steelers until near the end of the season. So definitely a backloaded, heavy schedule for them. But I think they'll come through. Like, I don't like the Ravens. It's not an organization, a team that I've been endeared with, mostly because of some of the players on the field I just have absolutely despised over the years. And it doesn't help that they have beaten my Dolphins a lot, including in the playoffs. But I'm not a Ravens fan in the least. However, I do think they may be the best team in the AFC this year. Now, will they show that come playoff time? That's up for debate. But 12 wins, I think at a minimum for Baltimore this year. I could see them getting to 13. The Bengals I do have in second place, like Justin. 10 wins sounds about right. Joe Burrow played at an MVP caliber level last year. The offense was fantastic. They scored over 30 points a number of times and still lost some of those games. We just can't have happen. Is the Bengals defense going to be any better this year? I don't know. I have no idea. They fired the defensive coordinator who had just been getting praised a few years ago in Lou Anarumo, and now he's gone because of the issues that they had last year. They finished in third place and 9-8 a season ago. I feel like they're going to have some regression to the mean in terms of their defense, which is actually a good thing. I think they're going to be better this season. And don't mess up a good thing on offense, because their offense is fantastic. Their new defensive coordinator is the one and only Al Golden, the former Penn State tight end, defensive coordinator in Cincinnati now after being with Notre Dame last year. They have these issues with their defensive end, trying to get Trey Hendrickson under contract or give him more money and an extension. He's not playing, holding out or holding in or whatever, looking for a new contract. Then their number 1 draft pick, Shamar Stewart, has not signed his deal because of issues with the way Bengals do business. They need to get both of those guys in there if they want to have a chance of challenging the Ravens, because I do think all the other teams in the AFC North, are a step behind the Ravens, even with all of their best players in camp and ready to go. But I do think that the Cincinnati Bengals will be better this year than their 8 or 9 wins last year. Just slightly better because you just need to see the defense get a little bit better, and I think they will. And I think Zach Taylor and the Bengals will likely be back in the playoffs this year to see what Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Chase Brown and that offense can do. Do I think they're a Super Bowl threat? Probably not really, unless that defense really has a huge, huge change. But I do think they're the second best team in the AFC North. Up next, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers with Justin as well. And just under Mike Tomlin, you feel like you know what you can get. Last year, they finished second in the AFC North at 10-7. Justin has them at 9 wins. And I feel like I need to put them at 9 wins just because Mike Tomlin has never had a sub 500 season. And if he gets less than 9 wins, that means he does. However, I don't know what the plan is for the Steelers right now. I've never been an Aaron. It's been a long time since I thought Aaron Rodgers was, I don't want to say a good quarterback, because he was a good quarterback even just like 3 or 4 years ago. But I've never been an Aaron Rodgers I never celebrated Aaron Rodgers. I never liked Aaron Rodgers. Maybe back when he was a rookie and getting the shaft from the Packers and Brett Favre, but then he just became Brett Favre 2.0. And I don't like either of them. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has it. I know some people say that he's still throwing the ball real well. Well, he didn't do it in either year with the Jets. And I know the first year doesn't even really count, but last year the Jets were still supposed to be a big thing and they were terrible. And, win by the quarterback, lose by the quarterback. You can say it wasn't Aaron Rodgers' fault, but he was the quarterback and they were terrible. I don't see how he's improving the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially with all the other things that the Steelers have or haven't done in the offseason. They, I guess, are going with Jalen Warren and Caleb Johnson at running back. They have Cordero Patterson, Trey Sermon there as well. Kenneth Gainwell came over. I don't know. I don't know what their plan is there. I know Najee Harris was up or down, but he was dependable to get what you needed when you needed it, it seemed. Going with Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Warren over either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields and Najee Harris, it just seems like a step down to me. And then on top of that, yeah, I know they traded for and got DK Metcalf, but they sent George Pickens packing, which I don't disagree with because George Pickens has a lot of issues, but DK Metcalf has at times as well. I feel like that's maybe a push. They brought in veteran Robert Woods, great. Pat Freiermuth, I love as the Penn Stater. Darnell Washington. I don't know. I feel like there's not an identity here. I feel like they're just churning to churn. 10 wins last year. I don't think they're getting there. Justin has them at 9. Honestly, I could see them only winning 7 or 8. I'm not high on the Pittsburgh Steelers. TJ Watt was not himself last year. Now he's looking for a new deal. I don't know. I'm not thrilled by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't think they're going to have a great year. I don't think they're a playoff team. Follow that up by talking about another team missing an identity and have no idea what they're going to do at quarterback, the Cleveland Browns. Last year, the Cleveland Browns were 3-14, pretty bad. Do I think they're better than that? Yeah, I kind of think they do, but not all that much. Justin has them at 5 wins. I guess I could possibly see that. They've got what four-headed quarterback competition going on right now at least. I guess really it's 5. I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to play much, if at all, this year, especially not early because of the multiple issues with his Achilles. So it's probably going to be Flacco or Pickett. But then they also drafted Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, which we followed along. They got rid of Nick Chubb, who was coming off of the ACL tear and came back last year and is now off to the Houston Texans. But Jerome Ford and I guess rookie Quinshon Judkins are the guys there. Maybe Pierre Strong. But silently last year, Jerry Jeudy had a great season. I'll see if he is able to duplicate that with whoever's starting at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. But I don't know. I feel like they can't get any worse than they were last year at 3-14. And I think they might find some better, consistent quarterback play if they go with Flacco, if they want to go that direction. But really, it'd be nice for them to find a solution there. Is that Gabriel or Sanders? I don't know. But they traded for Pickett too. It's tough. It's rough to be a Cleveland Browns fan, and that's always been true. But even right now, things are just really bad. So I think 5 wins is probably their ceiling. I agree with Justin on that one. All right, I know we're rushing things here. We've only got about 10 minutes each to go with the East divisions. Then are our favorite divisions. We're going to start in the NFC because we have to, because that is where the Eagles and Cowboys play. No surprise here. Justin does have the defending Super Bowl champions and his Philadelphia Eagles sitting at 11 wins on the season. So maybe a little bit of a step down for the Eagles. Unfortunately, he's not here to tell us what he's thinking about it. But obviously, last year, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. They went 14-3, winning the NFC East, being the number 2 seed in the playoffs. Beat the rival Commanders in the NFC Championship game, then obliterated the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. No doubt about it, the Eagles were the best team in the NFL last season. and they're what they get for that is losing offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. So they lost their offensive coordinator. He is now the head coach in New Orleans. They were able to retain probably their best defensive player, or at least their best signing from last year in Zach Bond. He's back on the team, but they did lose a bunch of other players. We just heard me say Kenneth Gainwell's off to the Steelers. Avonte Maddox went to the Detroit Lions. Isaiah Rodgers signed with the Vikings. Josh Sweat went to the Arizona Cardinals. Milton Williams went to the New England Patriots. And Mekhi Becton, their reclamation offensive line prospect, went to the Los Angeles Chargers. So they brought in some guys. A.J. Dillon replaces Kenneth Gainwell. Joshua Uche from the Kansas City Chiefs. Adoree Jackson from the Giants, who's never been able to put it together, his athleticism. But they also brought in Azeez Ojulari from the Giants. And obviously got some of their prime players, their best players, new contracts or extensions in Barkley, Johnson, Jurgens, and Davis. So, Darius Slay and James Bradbury from their secondary also moving on. And then Brandon Graham retired. Now, they did get one of the best players in the draft at 31 in the first round, Jahad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama. A lot of people are very high about him. I know he had some injury issues, and that's probably why he fell a little bit, but he's a playmaker. So having him in there with Bond, it should be interesting how they use him, and Nakobe Dean. Hopefully he comes back from injury. Nolan Smith had a great year. They signed Uche and Ojulari, so they are reloading at least at linebacker. It'll be interesting to see who they throw out there at defensive back. But Quinion Mitchell had a great season as a rookie last year. They still have Reed Blankenship and Cooper DeJean, who may play more cornerback this year versus nickel or safety like last year. But they're still one of the best teams. They get to start the season opening night, Thursday, September 4th, against the Dallas Cowboys at home. And they finish the season against the Commanders in Week 18. The Eagles, I don't want to say they got worse, but, I mean, probably on paper they did a little bit. They're going to face a tough schedule. 14 wins last year was phenomenal. I don't see them getting to 13-14 again, but I think 11 is a reasonable bet for Philadelphia this year. So I will agree with Justin that they win the division and get to about 11 wins. Now, the Commanders were the surprise of the 2024 season, winning 12 games, finishing second in the division, making it all the way to the NFC Championship game. And obviously the biggest thing there was rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels just setting the world on fire, looking absolutely fantastic. And it'll be interesting to see what he does in year two. Do I think they're a 12-win team? I don't know that they're a 12-win team. I know they brought in some nice pieces, and Deebo Samuel among them, but the 49ers got rid of him for a reason, so I don't know if he's still the guy, but he can't hurt to have him on the field. I don't know. I don't like to jump on the bandwagon immediately when a young quarterback has a great season, because we've seen that burn a lot of teams in the past. Do I think Jaden Daniels is probably the real deal? Yeah, I do. Can he be as good as he was last year? That I'm not sure. I am a big fan of Dan Quinn and him coming in. Such a huge turnaround in 1 year, going from 4-13 at the end of the Ron Rivera regime to 12-5 a year ago. 8-win improvement is just ridiculous. I think 12 wins is a lot, especially in a tough division with the Eagles, tough conference, and a tough schedule. Playing, a second place schedule and someone that's, you're not going to catch anyone by surprise in year two of the Daniels regime with Dan Quinn. So I think they're going to take a small step back. I'm probably right there with Justin. I think they're about a 10-win team, a playoff team. So that's where I have the Washington Commanders, which means that I also have the Dallas Cowboys just behind the Eagles and Commanders. I think right there at 8 or 9 wins. It wasn't a great year for the Cowboys last year. 7-10, third in the NFC East. Injuries and issues galore. Now they've had a bunch of departures
in free agency or retirement or injuries or whatever. They lost Rico Dowdell to the Panthers, although they brought in the Cowboys brought in Miles Sanders, almost kind of a running back swap there. They also signed Javonte Williams, signed the Dolphins offensive guard Robert Jones, brought Dante Fowler in from the Commanders, Solomon Thomas from the Jets, and probably the biggest thing is the trade for George Pickens from the Pittsburgh Steelers to have him in the same formations as CeeDee Lamb should go a long way. It'll be interesting to see who they trot out there with him, if it's going to be Tolbert or Turpin, one of the better returners. But it's a new regime. It's a new year for the Dallas Cowboys as Brian Schottenheimer takes over for Mike McCarthy. So it comes down to the health and performance of Dak Prescott. Surprise, surprise that it comes down to the quarterback position, but that's just the way it is. They traded for Joe Milton from the Patriots as a backup. It's only Milton and Greer behind Prescott, so they got to hope that Dak Prescott can stay healthy, because I don't know if Milton or Greer have it in them to carry a team for an extended portion of the season. They're playing a third place schedule, so they get a couple easier games, or might be the case. You expect to be the case, but I think the Cowboys are a slightly better than 7-win team. I think they should have been a slightly better than the 7-win team last year. New head coach sometimes can give a little bit of a perk up. Justin had him at 9 wins. I probably have him there myself, 8-9, 9-8, right around that territory for the Cowboys in 2025. Which means, yes, once again, I do have the New York Giants bringing up the rear in last place again. They were 3-14 and were awful last year. The Saquon Barkley departure just looked terrible in hindsight as the season went on. Just absolutely awful. Mentioned a few of their defensive players they lost in Adoree Jackson, Azeez Ojulari, Isaiah Simmons, all gone. What did they bring in? I mean, Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are probably the two biggest additions at quarterback. They needed to have a plan at the position. They also signed the Dolphins' Javon Holland, who I was really high on at one point, but did not have a great season last year. I do think it was just a down year. I think Holland's going to have a good year for the Giants this year. But the biggest thing for the Giants is bringing in not only 2 free agent quarterbacks, but also drafting Jackson Dart in the first round, 25th overall, the quarterback from Ole Miss. Divisive quarterback prospect. Didn't think he got a lot done with a ton of talent for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss over the years. Did best Penn State in the after the 2023 season, but it'll be interesting to see how often or how quickly he takes over at quarterback for the Giants, or if they stick with Russell Wilson or even Jameis Winston. I mean, they knocked it out of the park with their wide receiver pick in the draft last year, Malik Neighbors. He's dealing with some injuries during the offseason, but him and Jameis Winston, I think, could be a fantastic pair on offense. I don't know that they're going to get a lot of opportunities. The Giants did draft Abdul Carter, the defensive end from Penn State, number 3 overall, to add to that defense. And they do have a very good defensive line in New York with Dexter Lawrence manning the middle there. But I don't know. I mean, it comes down to quarterback. I mean, it sounds like a broken record, and it's so cliche, but it does. Who's going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Russell Wilson? Is it going to be Jameis Winston? Is it going to be Jackson Dart? Without knowing, I don't know how you can really give them too many more wins than last year. It's hard to only win 3 games in the NFL, and I guess I sort of say they are better this year just because they're even the quarterbacks they have, unknowns or journeyman veterans, are probably better than what they trotted out there 17 times last season. So I agree with Justin. I'm probably right around 5 wins, but that probably doesn't let Brian Daboll keep his job, and maybe not Joe Shane either. So they might be just completely starting over in 2026. And does that mean that the Jackson Dart experiment is also over after a season? Who knows? It's tough to be a Cleveland Browns football fan. It's probably tougher to be a New York Giants football fan right now. All right, so let's move over to the last division and go to the AFC East and talk about, the teams that I want to talk about, being a Miami Dolphins fan, which has been very difficult for the better part of 25 years. Let's be honest. It hasn't been great in Miami. I know I was making the rounds recently that the Miami Dolphins, the only team based in Miami to not only not win a championship, but even make a championship game. Yes, the Dolphins haven't made the AFC Championship game since like 1993 or something like that, which is just awesome. I love that the Florida Panthers have now won 2 Stanley Cups, and that the Florida Marlins, who aren't even called the Florida Marlins anymore, have won 2 World Series since the Dolphins last made the AFC Championship. Awesome. Do I think this is the Dolphins' year to break that? No, I don't, because I think the Dolphins are a middling team, like always, as they have been for nearly 30 years of my fandom. They had a good run in the early to mid 90s through the Dan Marino years and a couple years in the early 2000s, but it has been terrible to be a Dolphins fan for the last 25 seasons. And I don't really know that that's going to get any better this year. They're a fringe playoff team to me. Will I put them in the playoffs? I don't know. You'll have to turn back in a month at our next show to find that out. But let's start at the top. Justin went with the Buffalo Bills, and he has them about 13 wins, and that would probably be the AFC number 1 seed, as he had the Ravens at about 12. I can't recall the number of wins for the Chiefs, but we definitely had the Chiefs on top in that division, and we don't really talk about the AFC South because I don't think anyone's pushing 12 or 13 wins in the AFC South. So the Bills, quite possibly Justin's number 1 seed. He sees them winning about 13 games this year. I don't know that I disagree. Dolphins next at 10 wins. Also, don't think I disagree. Patriots next at 8 wins. I don't know that I disagree with him there either. I think New England is rising. Jets, do I disagree with him on the Jets? Maybe. I think 6 is reasonable for them. I could see them being worse. I don't really see them being better. I could see them being worse, though. As much as I hate on Aaron Rodgers, is what they have there this year any better? I don't know. We'll get to it. So let's start with the Buffalo Bills. And, once again, last season, torturous way to lose in the AFC Championship again in Kansas City, 32-29. They were 13-4 last year. We're first in the division. And, with all the losses and turnovers and issues they had off season and over the summer last year, it didn't really do too much. Why? Because they have a fantastic quarterback in Josh Allen. I hate to admit it, but I feel like Josh Allen is the NFL version of Bryce Harper for me. I wanted to hate on and dislike Bryce Harper when he was playing for the Washington Nationals, but I hated him because he was playing against the Phillies. I didn't hate the way he played the game or his actions and attitudes. I knew that if he was in Philly, I'd love him, and that's where we're at now. Do I ever think Josh Allen's going to play for the Dolphins? No. Would I love for it to happen? Yes. And that's not me hating on Tua. I'm a Tua guy. I like Tua, but obviously Josh Allen right now has proved to be the better quarterback. So Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are my number 1. I would put them probably right around 12-13 wins. I think the Ravens will get the number 1 seed in the AFC, but the Bills should be pushing the Chiefs for the number 2 spot. Obviously, number 1's the best, but with that first round bye. But I think the Bills are going to be right there when all is said and done. Significant changes for the Bills. Now they still have James Cook and Josh Allen. Keon Coleman's entering year 2 for them. They brought in. They have Elijah Moore and Josh Palmer added to Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir, that Laviska Shenault. Like, they have a bunch of guys that need to step in the 2 and 3 receiver role. Who's going to do that? Who's going to become the guy? We'll see. That was the biggest question mark last year, though, when Stephon Diggs was traded to the Houston Texans. And they just kind of cycled through guys having a big week, sort of like the Green Bay Packers that we talked about earlier. The Bills are in a similar spot where they don't really have a true number 1. They have a lot of guys that are like 2s and 3s. But it didn't really hurt them that much last year, so we'll see what they're able to do with it this year. 2-headed threat at tight end in Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. A very strong offensive line. And a defense that added Joey Bosa. Still really gone. Really good defensive linemen before adding Joey Bosa in Ed Oliver and Greg Rousseau. Daquan Jones. They brought in Michael Hoyt, who's suspended for a few weeks at the beginning, but was a great rotational guy for the Rams last year. Matt Milano's back and healthy, ready to go. Terrell Bernard has been a great player to step in there at linebacker. And they've just been able to find guys to plug and play in the defensive backfield as well. And I don't know that I see much of anything different for them. Tre'Davious White, Taylor Rapp, Teron Johnson, DeMar Hamlin, Cole Bishop, Christian Benford. So I expect to see more from Cole Bishop this year in year 2 for him. They start off tough. We talked about it. They got the Ravens in week 1, but winnable games, especially for them, the next 5 weeks. Jets, Dolphins, Saints, Patriots, Falcons. Now, I think the Dolphins and Patriots are good. Jets, Saints, and Falcons, the Bills are definitely better than. Bills tend to start slow, so maybe it's good that they have some, just average, above average teams to below average teams on the slate before they hit their bye in week 7. This is a manageable schedule for them. So I do think 12 to 13 wins is absolutely where Buffalo will be. Dolphins, they needed help on the offensive line, and then their best offensive lineman went and retired. Did they make some replacements? Sure, they made a few replacements. One's a guy coming off an Achilles tear coming over from the Steelers and James Daniels. They drafted a guy in the 2nd round, and Jonas Avinea from Arizona. He'll have to step in right away. They also had some issues on the interior defensive line last year. They went with Kenneth Grant out of Michigan at the number 1 first round pick and number 13 overall. I wasn't thrilled with the pick, but I see a lot of people that are happy about it. It comes down to quarterback. Tua's got to stay healthy, and he's got to look the way he did for most of 2023 when he was healthy versus 2024. I do think he's an underrated quarterback, but with some of the pieces around him, you feel like he probably should be playing a little bit better. So Achane is now the undisputed number 1 guy there. They still have Jalen Wright, who didn't do too much as a rookie, but should get more in year 2. Ingold's a great fullback, and they should be able to get some carries to rookie Ollie Gordon, who at one time was seen as one of the top-tier running backs in college football, and journeyman Alexander Madison is there as well. Gone is Raheem Mostert. He is now with the Raiders. Wide receiver, Tyreek Hill is still there. He had issues last year. Terrible season for him in the way that he usually plays. Jalen Waddle is just a health thing for him as well. Great addition, though, in Nick Westbrook-Ikine as their number 3 guy there. And it'd be great to see maybe Malik Washington step up in year 2 after a pretty good but up and down rookie season from him. What are they going to do at tight end? Jonnu Smith is there at the moment, but there's been talked about a new contract or possibly a trade. He had a career year for the Dolphins last year, and it would be great to have him back. Offensive line, they're always going to need help. It's where they've had issues at for years. Austin Jackson hasn't panned out as a number 1 pick at tackle. Maybe could see him at guard. Patrick Paul is the presumed starter at left tackle now in his 2nd year in the system. I mentioned Savinea is in there, probably going to man one of the guard spots. Aaron Brewer was a pretty good pickup in the free agency last year at center, and he's back there as well. Defensively, I don't hate the defensive line, especially with Zach Sealer in there with Benito Jones and rookie Jordan Phillips. And we also mentioned Kenneth Grant, the rookie addition along the defensive line. Linebackers have been a little bit hit or miss. Bradley Chubb should be back this year after missing all of last year with an injury. Jordan Brooks and Tyrell Dodson had pretty good years for the Dolphins last season. Jalen Phillips and Chop Robinson back at outside linebacker, edge players as well. Jalen Phillips back healthy, ready to go. Hopefully he can stay that way. And Chop Robinson, electric final half of the season, especially those last 8 weeks, looking like a real steal from Penn State after a slow start to his rookie year. Biggest problem for the Dolphins, they have no defensive backs, whatsoever. They're getting ready to probably trade, my boy, my favorite guy, Jalen Ramsey, who at times looks like one of the best to ever do it, and then other times look completely lost. I feel like last year was another one of those lost years for him. Who knows if he'll be on the roster to start the season or not. If he's not, it's even smaller. They need something from Cam Smith, early pick from a few years ago, hasn't really done anything. Then a bunch of journeyman and unknowns, Artie Burns, Ashton Davis, Storm Duck, Cater Kohu is probably the best of the bunch, but he's probably at best better suited at nickel or dime slot, but he's not a 1 or a 2. They don't have anything at all. They've made no real issues to bring in a guy there, which is concerning in a pass happy NFL. So, Yeah, I think the Dolphins can get to 10 wins, but that's on the strength of the offense and the front sevens on defense. They need someone to step up in a big way in that defensive backfield. Up next, I have the New England Patriots, and I think about 8 wins is probably right. I think they're going to be better this year. Mike Vrabel was brought in. I think he's a fantastic coach. I think the Titans were crazy to move on from him. I just think him coupled with some of the additions, Harold Landry, Carlton Davis, Morgan Moses, Robert Spillane, Milton Williams, Marcus Epps, Mac Hollins, Clevin Chasen, Josh Dobbs, Garrett Bradbury, Stephon Diggs, Travion Williams. A lot of great veterans brought in to supplement that roster. Now they did lose David Andrews, who retired. Excuse me. But that's that's pretty much it. I think all the other guys that they lost pretty much replaceable. They traded Joe Milton, like I mentioned, to the Dallas Cowboys. They did also trade David Goodshaw to the New Orleans Saints, one of the defensive linemen, but they signed Milton Williams. Will Campbell was their number 1 pick, 4th overall out of LSU, and should be a mainstay on the offensive line for years to come. And then they brought in the other Ohio State running back, Trevion Henderson, to pair with Antonio Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson. So interesting running back group there. Will be interesting to see what kind of step forward Drake May has. A lot of people thought he had a solid rookie year last year, and now you're adding Stephon Diggs, though coming off an ACL tear. But Kendrick Bourne, strong performer there. Mac Hollins has just been a guy everywhere he's gone, always steps up and have a great game, makes great plays here and there. And Jalen Polk there for year 2. So sneaky, underrated wide receiver group there. And Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper are a decent 1-2 punch at tight end for the Patriots. I think with Vrabel, their defense is going to see an improvement. So I'm buying the improved New England Patriots. Excuse me, oh, man, I got to get going. My cough's getting bad. 4-13 last year. I definitely think there's a chance they could double that win total. Like Justin said, he thinks it has them at 8 wins. I think 7 to 8 is absolutely reasonable and possible for New England Patriots if Drake May continues to step forward and Mike Vrabel steadies the ship and gets things organized and puts in a great defensive plan between him and Terrell Williams. And maybe they'll right the ship. I don't want to see that happen, but with Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator now under Mike Vrabel, I definitely think they can double their win total to the New England Patriots, getting them to 8 wins. And that brings us to the last and final team, the New York Jets, who were just a dumpster fire last year. 5-12, 3rd place in the AFC East. You can believe that, but I definitely think the Patriots have passed them. They brought in the Missouri offensive tackle in the 1st round, Armand Membo, to try to fix the offensive line. They've been trying to fix it for a number of years. They still have issues at quarterback. I am a bigger fan of Justin Fields than others are, but I just don't know that there's enough around him to make a lot of noise. Braylon Allen and Breece Hall are a good 1 and 2 running back punch. Questions along the offensive line. Garrett Wilson's a great receiver, but not a lot of other options up there that have stepped up and proven it. Same thing at tight end. Thought it could be Jeremy Ruckert. Now they drafted Jason Taylor's son, Mason Taylor. Could it be him? Possibly. Olufashinu, the Penn State offensive lineman the Jets took in the early 1st round last year, didn't have a great rookie season. They need him to step up and play better. They thought they were going to get that from Vera Tucker over the years inside. Now they brought in Membu. One of the guys that they brought in years ago that I really liked, Becton, they let go to the Eagles, and hey, he had a fantastic year for the Eagles and parlayed it into a new 2-year contract with the Chargers. Defensively, I do think the Jets are pretty solid defensively. Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, who else is there? Quinnen Williams, obviously. Linebacker, Jamin Davis came over from the Commanders. Quincy Williams, they could use a little bit of help there. I'm not as infatuated with them as I had been in years past, although it does depend where the edge players line up and play. I I don't know. It comes down to quarterback. I don't hate Justin Fields, but obviously I don't. He's at best, middle of the pack average. He's probably below average. He probably would be, below 16 in quarterback rankings. I think he's gotten a raw deal in the NFL with all the regime changes and team changes he's had to go through. But at the end of the day, sorry, but I think the Jets are one of the worst teams in the NFL. Justin Adam at 6 wins. I think they might be a 5-win team again. So, all right. Well, thanks for hanging in there with me and talking through this episode. I know it's a long one, even though it's just me here. Before we get going, I do want to check and see if anyone answered trivia. It does not look like anyone submitted anything in the comments. I will throw the answer up here now before we get out of here. So again, the question was, there are only 5 MLB players to hit 100-plus home runs for 3 different teams. Who are they? The answers were Jim Thome, Adrian Beltre, Darrell Evans, Reggie Jackson, and Alex Rodriguez. All of them hit 100 or more home runs for each of these MLB teams listed on the screen. So thank you so much to Mr. Raffoff for sending in that trivia question. Send in another one a month from now when we have our next show, and we'll throw it up there and have a good time. So I think that's about it. I got to get going here and move right along with my night. But thanks for tuning in for episode 421 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show for our second part of our NFL preview. Part 3 will be in about a month. I believe it is July 20th. I want to say July 20th rings a bell. Sunday, July 20th. Probably back at the normal time. We'll see. Not sure if Justin will be with me in studio or not, if we'll have a guest. But we will have our NFL playoff picks, who's our division winners with wild cards, who's making the championship games, and then who's making and winning the Super Bowl. So that's it. We'll be back in 1 month for episode 422 and the finale of our 2025 NFL preview. Thanks so much for joining me here this evening. Sorry, iPad died, can't do the outro music, so we'll do a little cold exit here and I'll get out of here. Hope everyone has a great end of June Independence Day holiday, and hey, enjoy the bulk of the summer while we're gone here. And happy early anniversary to my wife Kelly. We'll be celebrating 16 years on July 4th. All right, we'll see you again real soon.